Hey everyone. So, like we said then, what we want to do in this video is we want to, essentially what we want to do is we want to take our buttons and we want to change our buttons so they look a bit more like these ones here. So maybe we'll have a cursor, we'll have some text and the cost of a purchase, and then we'll have how many of each item we have. So if I click on here, for example, you can see that the number of cursors I have and the number of grandmas I have goes up. And I want something similar with our idea here. To start off with, actually, what I should really do is where I have my buttons, let's separate our buttons. So we've got, so here we are. Let's have our button with new row. Do that. So the button should be one underneath each other now. It's a bit too much. It needs a bit more space, but I'll change that later. Essentially, what I want to do now is I want to have a uniform look of our buttons. I'm actually going to change things. So I'm actually instead going to create, change these into a div, and I want to do it a bit more like this. So it's actually more like columns. So we want one button outline that contains 3 columns. And like I said, the first one will contain a cursor, the second one will contain a text, and then the third one will contain how many there are. So I want to do something like this. I'm going to use from Tailwind CSS. To be fair, Flex Row is just standard HTML. I think we can find this on W3 Schools as well. I'm going to use this sort of layout. So I'm going to use a flex row. So I'm going to change our button here. It's, even though it says, but it's going to say button, it's going to behave like a button. We're going to change it so that it's not quite a button, but it is. So look, now that I've changed that, it will act more like a sort of division, a sort of divider. But I'm keeping the class BTN, which means we're going to keep that button outline, because DaisyUI does allow us to hack our components. And DaisyUI, as I said, kind of is built off Tailwind, which is what I was looking at a second ago. So the next thing we said we had to do was we're going to add a flex column, like that. And so now everything inside here becomes sort of div columns. And what we're going to do is let's create our first one. Let's add our icon. To get our icons, I'm going to go to, let's go to font awesome. And we can get icons from just about anywhere, but I like these ones. So let's get one for, let's just find worker. What comes up? And if we just go to 3 icons, we got doctor and nurse. Oh, okay, let's try. There's another one called icons 8. Icons 8. Let's see what we find. We'll take this one. So if we look at this one here, and when we click on download, we can see that it comes as a PNG file, but we can't upload them onto CodePen. So what we'll do is we'll use the CDN link, and I'll go for the slightly bigger one, 96 pixels. And if I just copy that, so if we go back to here, so we wanted a div, like we said. So that div will have a class, and this will be a grid item. So each item on its own will be a grid item. So we'll say grid and flex grow. We'll add our image inside. We probably can get rid of that. That's looking a bit big. All right, so what we'll then do is we'll say our height will be, let's say 40 pixels, and that's better. All right, so we've got a higher worker. That's our first div. Now here where we have a text, we want to change that. So we're going to do exactly the same thing again. We'll do another div. In fact, I'll borrow that. It's got to be more or less the same. So we'll add our class. Inside our class, we'll add our hire worker, and we'll actually add our cost of worker right next to it too, here. And then we're left with one more. In fact, let's just copy and paste that. Makes our work easier. And we'll replace that one. What we want now is the number of workers that we have. So if I just remove that, what we want is we want this in big text. Yeah. So we have a number of workers slightly further up. There's our workers. I don't actually want the text that says workers anymore. I just want this bit here. So let's borrow that span. And we're going to stick that. Where's our third item? This is our third item. There we go. So we'll stick that there. So we should have now a third column with a number. But what we want is that number to be fairly big, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a new class here. So inside the span, I'm going to say span equals, and let's just say our button numbers. And in our CSS, what we'll do, so here in our CSS, we're going to add a style for it. So we're going to add that new class. So we said button numbers. And we'll just make it a big font size, right? So we'll say font size, we'll say 30 pixels. And that should change that 0 straight away. And you know what? Let's put a semicolon. Well, let's add the same font that we have for our heading here. We'll take that. So we'll just take the font family there. And we'll stick that there as well. And let's add font weight as well. Let's make it, that's a bit too thick. Weight. And let's say 400. Yeah, that's looking better. Right, ideally, I think what would be nice is if we had £10 on a new line. We'll work that in a bit. But yeah, so now that we've done that, we can actually do exactly the same thing for hire manager. So it might be easier if we just take here where we have hire work. Let's put a new line there. And I can get rid of workers here now. God. You can get rid of hire workers here. And so where do we have hire manager? Hire worker, sorry. We'll copy and paste that. And we'll overwrite it with need that there. And then the break as well. We'll stick that there. Yeah, so this one's just going to become hire manager. So that becomes hire manager, and that one becomes hire manager. And that was cost of manager. And I don't think there's anything else to replace. That was 100 to begin with. And so I think I can just delete that. I don't need that anymore. Well, let's go to here and let's get ourselves a manager. So this could be our manager icon. He looks funny enough. If we download that, and actually that one will be just fine. 48 pixels is fine. I hope. Let's check. So we're going to replace the image here. So this concludes this video. In our next video then, what we want to do is hopefully incorporate like a large donut icon, and that should be our last video. I'll see you then.